So welcome to One Woman's Journey. My name is Rachel Jewell and I'm a transformational coach, and I'm really happy today to have Dr. Linda Pettit with us to share her journey and experience with us. And I wonder, Linda, welcome first of all, welcome to the One Woman's Journey program. And I wonder if you could just start by just like introducing yourself a little bit to us.
Sure. Well, I've been a student and sharer of the three principles for 17 years, and been a psychologist, counselor, helper for close to 40. So helping has been a part of my life for a very long time. I do a lot of individual consulting work with people, programs with people, and I really enjoy my work. I'm currently working on a book. It's a spiritual memoir. And the central part of my life is really my husband and my children and my grandchildren. I have 10 grandchildren and one on the way, and 2 great-grandchildren.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. That's a lot of joy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. So perhaps you could share with us what you think would be most helpful to our listeners today around how we build our sort of thoughts and beliefs in life and how that can impact, and then moving on obviously to when you sort of came across the principles and how that helped you really.
Well, my story is not one, from my point of view, you sent me some questions ahead of time to think about, and so I reflected on it. It's not one of, oh, things were all bad and terrible and awful, and then suddenly they became good when I found the three principles. That's just not true. The fact is that I had a lot of blessings. I enjoyed a lot of blessings in my life and had a lot of happiness. And then there were these, it would kind of alternate with these darker, more difficult times. I have been very blessed to know from the time I was very small, as my earliest memories, that I was guided by something, by a force behind life. And that force, as I experienced it, had my back, was benevolent, was love, and wanted me to have a full life. And I'm very grateful that I was raised Catholic, and grateful that my parents had the resources to send me to Catholic schools, including a Catholic all-girls high school, because I was blessed to have a context for exploring that force, a language for it. And I still find that very beautiful. And the more I go back and look at it, the more awed I get by the beauty of it, that I was just blessed to meet a lot of male and female mentors who really encouraged me to embrace the spiritual. Let me say that, embrace the spiritual side of life. But then alongside that, there would be these experiences of difficulty that for me were primarily about anxiety and worry, less about depression. Kind of a sense of, that I had to keep my guard up, because right around the corner there was going to be something very difficult to deal with. I kind of lived with a sense of doom, that bad things could and would happen. And as I look back on it, I realized even when I was in the 4th grade, about 10 years old, psychology was not as, clear as it is right now about trauma and traumatic stress. But I probably at that point would have qualified for a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. I had all the symptoms. And then through my life, struggled with a tremendous amount of panic. So a long period of very significant panic attacks, disabling panic attacks, but never to the point that I couldn't work or couldn't move my career forward or couldn't move forward with my life, because I think there were these buffering periods where I felt well and I felt that all was well. And so the combination of experiencing those two things led me to be very curious, just very curious. Why is it that sometimes this flow of God and this flow of love and this flow of a full life unfolding is so strong? And then why are there times when there's just darkness and difficulty and pain? And so I was really on a preoccupied search to figure that out.
Because that's quite a contrast, isn't it? It's feeling that universal strength and spirit and force, absolutely. But actually, at the same time, there sounds like there's quite a lot of fear around actually something really bad's going to happen, and you know, holding those two things together, that's quite a conundrum, isn't it?
Yeah, and I would say the sense of being guided and the sense of sort of peacefulness and safety was much greater than the fear and the worry. But when the fear and the worry was there, it was strong enough that could really, really be very difficult to go through. And to the point that even when I was in the fourth grade, I was struggling enough that I came to the attention of counselors, and I had some counseling, and I'm not exactly sure why that started to surge at that point. I have some ideas, but it's not really that important. But yeah, continuing until I found the principles. And then when I found the principles, or when they found me, when the language of them found me, I really began to see the answer to both of those questions: how to not be worried and anxious, and why I sometimes felt like I was connected to this force and sometimes didn't.
Now I'm really intrigued. I'd love to hear about those answers. Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting, Rachel, that about within 6 months of meeting my husband, Bill Pettit, who some of your listeners may know is a very long-standing teacher of the three principles and a psychiatrist. Before I met him, I had a couple of spontaneous insights that just came to me, where I saw that my worry and my anxiety was connected to my thinking, and that I was literally creating it with my thinking. They were just gifts that came to me, but I didn't really have a language for understanding them. And then I met Bill, and through Bill, I met his teacher, Sydney Banks, who had the insight that unfolded for the rest of us, the understanding of the principles. And gradually, I really saw that I was creating my experience of life through this beautiful, beautiful power of thought. I will admit that I grow a little impatient when I hear people saying, "Oh, it's just your thinking," because thinking to me is a power. It's a gift. It's a spiritual gift, and it's sad that we misuse it because we just don't understand it. We don't understand the nature of it, and that's what happened to me. I just didn't understand the nature of it. I didn't see it. And so sometimes I would use it really foolishly against myself. And in doing that, I would create a lot of anxiety and fear. And when I met Bill and met Sid, I also saw that the only thing that had ever resulted in my feeling disconnected from the spiritual force of love or God or spirit, whatever you want to call it, was my own personal thinking. What I was doing in my own head with that beautiful gift of thought, that would, if I got real preoccupied with upset thinking of one form or another, I could create a lot of physiological discomfort that we would call panic.
Yeah.
And gradually, you know, wasn't like a light bulb turning on and off. It was like a dimmer switch being
Mm,
moved slowly upward. I began to experience more and more periods of prolonged lightness in my life, and you know, got to a point today where I don't have any panic. I have moments from here, there, time again and time again of anxiety, of getting a
mm,
little worried, but it's very short in duration because I know where it's
mm,
coming from. You know, it's
mm,
coming from my personal use of thought. But the biggest thing for me that has made the difference is just the profound and deep sense that I am guided through
mm,
life, and that if I can just be quiet, be silent in my own head, it just gets easier to hear the guidance that's coming
mm,
that moves me through everything.
mm. Yeah. Wow. So seeing, would you say that you saw through your thinking, that your, or more so that you saw your thinking for what it was, and actually a sort of made up, a sort of made up, and I'm not sure whether you're referring to thinking you were having about yourself and whether you were okay or not okay, or whether you felt like external things were not okay, so high school or relationships, or was it sort of thinking around both inside and out, or was it more about who you perhaps were as a person and not feeling okay as a person?
I don't know. I don't know that it really falls neatly into any of those
Mm,
categories, Rachel. It was more about seeing the nature of thought itself, that thought is a gift, and that we're guided, moved through life by this spiritual intelligence, which, you know, call it intuitive understanding or wisdom, that we're guided, that we're given everything we need, or we have everything we need to move gracefully through anything that happens on this side of life. And that yes, we're given to use it personally. We're given to
mm,
use that gift personally.
mm,
And when we use it personally, it's a powerful gift. It's like a
mm,
powerful magic.
mm,
And we can create anything. We can create concepts about ourselves,
mm,
concepts about the world, concepts about our symptoms, concepts about God, concepts about everything,
mm.
you know, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the beauty of it, that it's a highly creative gift that we're using.
yeah.
And if we don't understand the nature of it and how it works, we're innocently
Mm,
vulnerable, I guess
yeah.
I would say, to creating things aren't very that aren't very happy, or that
Mm,
aren't very
mm. So it
uh,
sounds like for you, it was really being able to see both the power of thought and how it works in our sort of human experience, how we use it really.
yeah. I mean, my first insight, which happened before I encountered Bill and the Three Principles through and Sydney Banks and his writings and teachings, I was just really sitting on a sofa folding laundry one day, and I was thinking about something. It was a relationship, and I was kind of thinking my way into a depressive experience of it. Like, oh, you know, things will never work out, and oh, you know, why did this happen and why did that happen? And I felt myself sinking, and all of a sudden I had this sense of like sitting beside myself, looking at myself. This was very spontaneous.
Mm,
And I saw that with every thought there was a physiological experience in my body that didn't feel good,
mm,
that I would label depression. And I remember kind of thinking, oh my goodness, I'm creating depression.
mm,
Depression is not something that comes and sits on the top of my head from out there. It's coming from within me. I'm in charge of this. But I didn't have language for that. I didn't know to describe it to anyone else. And then fast forwarding 6 months,
mm,
I encountered Bill and Sid and began to have a language for understanding what I'd seen. And that was really beautiful, because obviously if
mm.
you're creating something, you can uncreate it.
Yeah, Yeah. Or create something different, or create something that feels good. Yeah. Yeah. So having that sort of witness, becoming the witness to what you were doing, and seeing how what you were thinking was also creating a feeling in you,
Mhm.
enabled you sort of naturally, without your effort really, or to be able to see what was happening with thought and feeling.
Mhm.
And that, I mean, I might be putting words into your mouth, but I would be saying that's the wisdom and that's the source in action. Would you agree?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it was
Mm.
certainly a moment of elevated consciousness that
Mm.
I was noticing what was happening in my experience and had an insight about that that then allowed me to move forward a little more, a
Mm.
little more gently.
Yeah.
And then I mean, I guess the biggest experience that I've had so far of seeing what life is about was the sudden death of my husband, my first husband, on Christmas Eve in 1999. And it was for me like, oh my God, the thing that I've most feared all my life, that there would be some
Mm.
tragic thing, some experience that would totally swamp me. It happened.
Yeah.
And there it was. Um, my first husband and I had been in a relationship for 25 years. We've been married for 18. He was the father of my one daughter by birth. And the sudden loss of him on a big holiday that's about
Mm.
joy and love and warmth and peace was devastating. It was
Yeah.
really devastating. But uh, the thing that started to happen, so this was before I knew anything about the principles, because I didn't meet the three principles until I met my present beautiful husband, Bill. I think when you have something like that happen, there's a period of time for most people where you try to figure it out.
Mm. Yeah.
And my mind was just racing with, well, we'd only put new tires on the car because he died in an automobile accident. If only if only he hadn't done this, if only I hadn't done that, if only we'd made different decisions about that.
Mm.
There was just this period of, it was very obsessive, ruminative thinking,
Mm.
uh, trying to understand it. But I don't know, 2.5, 3 months into it, I sank into the most profound quiet that I've experienced ever in my life, when it was like kind of like my ego just gave up and
Yeah.
said, there's no figuring this out.
Mm.
I don't know why it happened. I couldn't have
Mm.
stopped it, and I can't change it.
Mm.
And it was a really extraordinary time, because I started to see with crystal clarity that there really was guidance pulsing through my consciousness via thought.
Mm.
Everything comes via thought, right?
Yeah.
A little
Yeah.
thought that would go, Linda, right now, just take care of this.
Mm.
Linda, right now, just take care of that. Linda, right now, just do this. Linda,
Mm.
right now, this is going to be okay. And it brought incredible comfort. And um, one of the experiences I had that really was profound was I was in a moment of deep grief and anger. I was really pissed at my husband for leaving me.
Mm.
And I lived in the woods of West Virginia here, which is a very isolated area. And we had a wood stove in our house. We heated with wood, and I had to move wood from the wood bin to the back
Mm. Yeah.
deck to get it to the fireplace. And I was slogging through 2.5 feet of snow to do that. And I was really mad. I was screaming at him, like, what were you thinking, leaving me to do all this work? This was your job, not mine. It's really
Yeah.
funny now that I think about it.
Yeah.
But I stopped, and I was really sobbing. And I looked over, and I happened to glimpse my late husband's bird feeders. He had taught me to just slow down and enjoy nature. And he was very close to the earth. And I was filled with this gratitude, just incredible gratitude, and suddenly was aware of the beauty around me in the woods and the mountains, and my good fortune at being there. And I thought, oh my goodness. after a while, I suddenly noticed consciousness again.
Mm.
Wow, I moved from grief, great grief,
Mm.
incredible lightness of being, incredible gratitude in a nanosecond.
Mm.
What was that?
Yeah.
What was that about?
Mm.
How did that happen? And so I really saw in that moment, what I saw was, if you can find gratitude, if you can find the feeling of gratitude, this whole experience is going to be a lot lighter and a lot gentler. And
Mm.
that really sustained me through the next year and a half. And then when I found the principles, or the principles found me, I suddenly had a language for that. Yeah, there were lots of different thoughts going through my head, but I had a choice about which ones I noticed.
Mm. Mm.
And the ones that were worth noticing and really paying attention to were the ones that left me with a beautiful feeling.
Yeah. 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 Oh, that's lovely, Linda. I mean, we're coming up to our time, but I think what you've really been able to share with us really is that everything is here for us. You know, everything in terms of what we're made of and what's guiding us, and that sort of spiritual intuition that you had from a young age. But that also we're here having this human experience, really, and the terrible thing, you know, did happen, and you know, life happens, and grief and loss and sadness is, it's all part of our experience, isn't it? It's not one or the other, or because we can feel spiritual guidance, God or universal source, whatever sort of words apply to people, that is not going to take us out of the human experience. You know, and I think what you've done here is you've really been able to share that, in, you know, in terms of your own experience, and what you were just saying just now around, you know, from the snow and the grief and the anger to that beautiful feeling, and how quickly that can happen at times. But it's a fluid process. It's not set for good or bad, is it? It's very fluid.
Well, I guess the thing that I would want anyone listening to this to take away was just that there's reason to hope. It's not like once you see these principles that we're talking about, mind, thought, and consciousness, it's not like once you see them that suddenly they're there working for you or working against you. They've been behind the scenes doing the heavy lifting from the time any of us took our first breath.
Yeah.
And it's about living in harmony with how they work. And when you live in harmony with how they work, then, I mean, it's not that life gets perfect, but it's possible to move gracefully through anything and everything, and sustained by the knowing that there is something, a spiritual intelligence guiding us, and that if we simply see how thought works, how our personal thinking works, we're just much better positioned to drop it and find the silence underneath. And the silence underneath is where the action is. It's where the spiritual intelligence is that moves us forward through everything.
Yeah, I love that. That's where the action is. That's yeah. That's the energy. That's the force. You know, that's the gift. That's the power. That's where it is. You know, yeah. And I love also you say how, you know, it can help us move gracefully through. And I guess that feeling of, you know, we are never alone. You know, we are never alone. Linda, thank you so much. You know, that's just been wonderful. Thank you. Now, if people would like to hear a bit more about what you get up to, where's the best place for them to find you?
Well, my husband Bill and I have a beautiful website. It's www.thedoctorspettit, so THEDRSPETTIT.com. And we both have separate pages on there that describe our backgrounds and the kind of work we do. And
Mm.
we have a scheduling system built into the website so people can schedule there. And if people want to get to know me more, I do blog, and I have a blog on that website where you can kind of read and get a sense of the way I think. There are a lot of videos out there. Some of them are on our website, some are just on YouTube. The one that people it's interesting, that often find the most helpful is one that I did in New York years ago called Managing Transformative Change.
Oh, okay.
And that you can find on YouTube, where I talk a lot more about, my own journey with worry and anxiety and fearfulness, sitting alongside this awareness that the reality, when I'm moving through that kind of reality of feeling those things, I know that that's not the only reality.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure, Linda. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you would like to rewatch this video and also my other videos, you can find me at racheljewelcoaching.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.